Yes, thank you for that introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like also to welcome you to our event today. And this Congress brings together business leaders, public leaders, and thought leaders. And as leaders, you have standing and recognition, but you also have accountability and responsibilities. You have opportunities to make a difference, but you also face challenges. So what does it take to actually be a successful leader today? If you go to an airport, you'll find there's lots of self-help books on how to get ahead, how to build a personal brand, how to make an impression. But leadership is not really about us. It's about all of those people without whom we could achieve very little. And it's about all of those people who depend upon us for help and support. It's about relationships rather than attributes. It's about service to others, service to customers, service to employees, and service to business partners. And we always need to ask, why should other people put themselves out for us? Why should other people follow us? But leadership can also be about service to a cause. And I recall many years ago when I chaired the executive committee of the Order of St. Lazarus in England and Wales, we would have unpaid volunteers who would give up their time to drive lorry loads of supplies into war zones in the Balkans, and they'd put themselves at risk delivering food aid and delivering medical aid. And people really will go the extra mile if they actually believe in the cause. So wherever possible, try to turn what you are seeking to achieve into a cause, because if you share a compelling vision and a worthwhile purpose, then other people will follow. You'll actually be giving meaning to their lives, because people, particularly the younger generation today, they really want to feel that they're doing something useful with their lives. Now, astute leaders also need to be alert to what's happening in the marketplace around them. And today, if we look at what's happening in our marketplace, how will India's general election and the fact that there's a new government with a majority impact upon our companies and their customers? How should you respond? What changes or developments would help you to be more competitive? What opportunities will the change of government create? Could you collaborate with other organizations or with government itself to improve the infrastructure or transform public services? Building relationships can demand patience, fairness, and flexibility. But visions can inspire, but actions are required to realize them. That fine words in themselves need to be matched by appropriate deeds if we're going to make things happen. Polishing an image is no substitute for addressing the fundamentals. Now, Google is an internet business, but its searches depend upon powerful computers, real machines that need to be kept running. And if you're on boards, you always need to make sure that the resources and capabilities of the organization match what it is that you're setting out to achieve. Now, there's lots of critics of competitive capitalism today, and I occasionally go along to conferences and I meet these critics, and they often suggest that in some way business leadership is less worthy, less commendable than, say, thought leadership or academic leadership or moral leadership or cultural leadership. But if we look at what competitive capitalism is about, if competition leads to new offerings, new choices, new options for people, then it can be highly beneficial. And I think, we should all be proud to be business leaders, because when properly regulated, there's fair competition and people have a choice, then markets can be intrinsically fair. And confident leaders welcome competition that spurs improvements. Now, protectionism, corruption, and favoritism are the opposite of free choice and open markets, and they're formidable barriers to entry and barriers to progress. And as business leaders, you should champion fair play and encourage innovation. And again, with a new government, what would you like to see the new government do? to tackle protectionism, corruption and favoritism. Now, leadership is all about being focused and relevant rather than being clever. And it's interesting that very often people who are very intelligent sometimes see so many angles to questions and problems that they face that they procrastinate. And windows of opportunity can be missed as a result of excessive analysis. So another thing that you require as a leader is decisiveness and courage, because sometimes you cannot wait. You have to take a decision. Now, when taking decisions, responsible leaders try to do what's right. They have an intrinsic sense of what the right thing to do is in this particular situation. And the reason for that is success today in all walks of life really depends upon relationships. And it's very difficult to build and sustain relationships with people if they feel that you're being unfair. Another great problem with leadership is that if you fail to listen to others, and particularly if you don't take good advice, then you're exposing your organization to dangers. And in the June issue of Quality Times, which I think is in your delegates pack, you'll see there's an article from me on the relationship between the chief executive and the board. Because even the best of leaders can sometimes make the wrong call. And a very important role of boards is to provide challenge, is to question. And flexibility is very different from being rudderless, because very often if you have your vision, you find there's more than one route to a particular destination, and changing direction sometimes on the basis of good advice is actually a sign of strength. Insecure people tend to rationalize failure, rationalize wrong decision. They look for scapegoats, people to blame when things go wrong. But confident leaders are prepared to admit to mistakes and to learn from them. And instead of looking for scapegoats, they look to limit damage and they look to find better alternatives. If you're a strong leader, you welcome honest feedback and objective advice. Integrity, humility, resilience, these are all valuable qualities for a leader today. But in order to succeed, you must also learn how to cope with disappointments and how to cope with setbacks. As a leader, you will find that you also have to balance contending interests and balance competing priorities. It's very difficult to give all of the people all of the things they want all of the time. And the trick very often is to give people enough to keep them on side and enough to ensure that you're making steady progress towards that vision, that cause that you're trying to promote. In my recent reports, I'm suggesting that greater emphasis should be given to the provision of better support. Now, there's no point asking people to follow you to achieve something, however compelling and exciting it is, if you don't actually make sure that those people have the tools, the means to do what's required of them. And many of those people are hidden heroes within your organization that as a leader you need to thank for the work that they're doing. And confident leaders put enormous effort into developing, helping and supporting other people. And very often, the legacy that they leave behind, the most significant thing that they may do is actually building a high-performance organization, a high-performance team that can keep things moving forward. Now, leaders who rest upon their laurels are a great risk to organizations because complacency really is the enemy of continued competitiveness. If I look at the organizations, like when I was growing up, the organization that had the biggest cash mountain of any company in the United Kingdom was General Electric, which became Marconi. That company later imploded as a result of a mistaken strategy. Nokia, I remember for years, was a market leader in mobile phones, but was knocked off its perch as a result of a failure to innovate and a failure to anticipate new developments. So reinvention is hugely important if you're a business leader and could be the key to longevity. And good business leaders maximize the future chances of their organizations by listening, by challenging, and also staying close, as General Alawali has said, by staying very close to their customers. They keep flames alive, and they pass them to the next generation. Now, being effective as a custodian of a vision can require re-engagement with stakeholders, not taking them for granted, but re-engaging. It can require a periodic reassessment of what you're trying to do, and re-establishing whether what you're trying to do is still relevant in a changing world. So be prepared to question all of those things that you may hold dear. Your corporate practices, your priorities, prevailing attitudes, cherished beliefs, familiar approaches, widely held views. And boards should attempt to challenge all of these things, to question whether they're still valid in a changing world. For example, in the conference book when it appears, and in my chapter, I'm suggesting that boards should question whether you necessarily need to change a corporate culture when there are quicker, cheaper ways very often of achieving the behavior changes that you're seeking. Now, leadership in today's world also needs to be sustainable. And as leaders, you always need to be seeking new ways of operating that reduce emissions and minimize demands upon scarce resources. And one of the scarcest resources that you can command is the time of other people. And people's time is very precious to them. So as leaders, and indeed us as speakers today, we need to use other people's time very wisely. And self-aware leaders know when the time is right to call time. And some leaders, when you look at them, it's quite interesting that they stay beyond their use-by date, and very often they harm their reputations by so doing. Now, here at the podium at Institute of Directors Congresses, we normally know when to call time, because Ashok Kapoor, that master of diplomacy, very often stands behind you, and you know that at that point you've probably said enough. And I sometimes wish I could take Ashok to board meetings that I attend so that he could stand behind some of the people around the table. Some leaders do run out of steam, and they lose the plot. But others stay current and vital. They go on and on and on, and they continue to add value. They continue to make progress towards their visions. And importantly, like delegates at this Institute of Directors Congress today, they continue to question, they continue to discuss, and they continue to learn. So do business leaders get the recognition that they deserve in today's society? I think ultimately, fulfillment as a leader comes from within. That you know whether you have the peace of mind of having few regrets. You know whether you have the satisfaction that comes from the knowledge that you've used your leadership positions to make the world a better place. Whatever external recognition you have, nothing can take the place of that sense that you have, that you've done your best as a business leader. And in conclusion, I'd just like to say that for all that all of you do as business leaders, thank you.